My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of, you know what it is, 40 plus gay men, gay talk. We do these conversations about everything that gay men, queer men should be talking about, but we ain't. And we haven't been talking enough this month about Black history. We had one guest and we wanted to wrap up the month with another beautiful Black gay guest to talk about what is it like to really, truly be Black queer man in the world. And also one who's HIV positive. And there's always such stigmas around this stuff. I've done many shows around this, and it's always fulfilling to me to let's bring the conversation up again. He happens to be someone who has really had some impact here in the world around this. He is the deputy director for Normal Anomaly Initiative, which I'll let him get into. But he's also one of the, in 2024, he was a White House Rising Leader. Let's go there with the Greater HIV Ambassador Initiatives. And of course, now here we are in 25 and all that's gone bye-bye, but we're not going to give up. We're not going to let that stop us. His name is Jordan J. Edwards, and I am really excited to talk about his world, his life, how he sees things. And he's actually got a little kicking event coming up in May that we're going to talk about to really help Black queer people continue to be seen and feel as beautiful and wonderful as they are. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to say, Jordan, welcome to the podcast, man. Really happy you're here, bro.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to spend some time with you. I've been checking out your podcast and listening to your conversations, and I like the flow of the way you have conversations with people. So I'm hoping that we can, vibe and have some good energy today.
Well, cool. I'm glad that $100 I Venmo'd you right before we started paid off, because you said all
the right words
right there. Yeah. But no, I appreciate the authenticity that, you come with, because some people would be like, no, I couldn't really talk about some of this. And I feel like part of what I've tried to establish is let's be real. Let's talk about the real stuff, because if we're not talking about the real stuff, then we're all pretending to be something we're not in the world. And I feel like reality is where it really truly exists. And I know probably one of the questions that I could ask is so tell us, what is it like to be a gay Black man living with HIV? But I'd rather ask the question, what is some of the greatest lessons that you've learned about yourself or about the world, because you are a Black, gay, queer man with HIV living on this spinning little planet we call Earth?
That's a very good question. I would have to say that what I have learned is that the intersections of my identity has always played a role into how people saw me. First being a man, then being a Black man, but then with becoming a person living with HIV, that added an extra layer of stigma behind me. And you're always trying to find out a way to either find your own place in spaces or fit in places depending on the person. But when you share that you're living with HIV, in some spaces, people are receptive to it and say, oh, I didn't know that you would be someone living with HIV. And other people would be like, but you're tall, you're handsome, and you're masculine. So how did that happen? There's this questioning that happens. And so what I've learned is that people don't really want to understand for clarity more than they want to have a layer of judgment. And that's where stigma kind of resides.
That's such an interesting way you laid that out, that layer of judgment. Because as you're saying, I'm going to be really honest, as you were saying that, I felt my little bald-headed Papa Bear is not liking if people are saying this stuff, because it's so judgmental. Oh, you're tall and handsome, so what happened? Why you?
Yes.
I'm like, that would be like, well, you look really good, so you're tall and handsome. What happened with the hair? It's these are just things that show up in life, and that to me just catapults the stigma that
Mhm.
already exists. And I know for you and your community, and I'm going to just not try to even know and understand your community,
Mhm.
but there's this thing that I know exists. Oh, well, it's not just it's gay men, but then black people
Mhm.
get this thing too. I
Mhm.
actually heard somebody say that once, and I actually confronted him like, white people can get this too.
Yeah.
Young people can get this. People who are
Mhm.
60 can get, quote, this. And I did that.
Yeah.
Those who are watching this on video, you just saw me use the air quotes. It's not just this. Like anybody can get cancer. Anybody can do this. So when you feel that pressure or that stigma, flare up, I would assume, without making an ass out of myself, I would assume that you've had to manage how you choose to respond in those spaces.
Absolutely. Because you first have to show up and figure out how you're going to present yourself. And I think that there's something that I would like to talk between showing up as a representative and also having representation, because those are two different things.
Yeah.
Um, what's really important for me is when I had to show up and had to figure out how to respond. Do I take this as a moment to educate because people don't have the knowledge in those areas, or they haven't been able to speak openly to ask unfiltered questions? Or do I take offense to it and protect myself because it is also my safety that is on the line? Because
Yeah.
if I have to expose myself or share or disclose my status, that does put me in harmful spaces,
Yep.
especially when we talk about HIV being a crime in certain states.
Mm-hmm.
I have to wonder when I travel. Luckily in Texas, probably one of the few things that we have right is we don't have those types of laws that kind of go into HIV being a crime. But when I travel to Louisiana and somebody wants to flirt with me or talk to me, I'm like, do I disclose my
Mm-hmm.
status? Because it can put me on a safe space. And if we engage, then you can say that I purposely tried to make you be someone living with HIV. Even though I understand you equals you, I understand that undetectable equals untransmittable. It still is how do I respond to people? And it's a very isolating thing if you don't take the time to kind of work on yourself.
I'm glad you brought up you plus you because
Hmm.
it's somewhat new in the vernacular of how we talk
Hmm.
about this. And so I think for many of my listeners who are kind of new to the scene, I'm going to be really honest,
Hmm.
some because of my work that I've done mostly with men coming out of the closet later in life, even though the podcast is for 40 plus, because 40 plus gay men, we're all kind of fucked up. I'm admitting I'm 61, boys. I'm fucked up still. Okay. Let's be honest. We all have our little fuck ups in
Yeah.
life. But I think it's really important to like really talk about that. So if you were explaining to someone you plus
Hmm.
you, how
Hmm.
would you, explain that to them?
Yes. So I will take it to, for a lot of times we have an easier way to digest things when we bring in sex. So I will bring in the sex part of it. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm having sex with someone or I'm getting ready to engage with them, me as a person living with HIV, I have an undetectable level of HIV inside of my body.
Yep.
That means that if I engage with this person sexually, whether we are whatever we get to the climax,
Yep.
um, I cannot transmit HIV to them because the virus is so low inside of my body. So to
Mm-hmm.
really explain it equals that that is the goal to which a person with HIV, person living with HIV, can be able to have sexual encounters, engagement, and intimacy without having to be worried about transmitting the virus to anyone else.
It's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that simple
That's
conversation.
simple.
It's
That's
that
simple.
simple, you know?
Mhm.
And I think too often, as you know, people hear, oh, HIV, stay away.
Yes.
Back
Yes.
in the day, those who've listened to my podcast know this, but my dad's oldest brother was one of the very first to pass away from HIV and AIDS.
Hmm.
And it was back in the day when we didn't know. I mean, it was,
Hmm.
I remember coming into his hospital room and, I don't want to go too deep on this because I've said it before on the podcast, but, the blotches on his skin and everything, we had no idea.
Yeah.
And even then, as a young hiding gay man, I was petrified. And that is actually one of the reasons I didn't come out. I did come out when I was 19 and went back in the closet because I was so ill informed, but we were all very ill informed at that time. And as I started to grow through into myself and started doing this work, one of the things I always vowed was I will always talk about this.
Yeah.
Because if I'm only got, 20,000, 30,000 people that download a month or whatever it is, that's 20,000, 30,000 people that just heard, here's a definition of you plus you that can make this really simple. if I want to ejaculate, you're not going to be hurt by what I ejaculate.
Right.
And so that makes me happy. I'm like, okay, sure. Come all over my chest, come all over, whatever,
Right.
because that's what I want to get to experience still. And I've seen the opposite happen, especially, let's go there, in the online worlds of Scruff, Grindr, Adam for Adam, wherever it is. The bitches can be vicious. Let's just go there.
They can.
And it's got to really hurt as a man who's living with this. It's great if you don't want to be with somebody. That's fine. But don't be a dick about it.
That's such a good point. So so I like to cruise. And so when I cruise, I also like to use Sniffies. It's one of the applications that I use. And so Sniffies is this, it's an app, but it's more of a web-based app that you can use to kind of like find people in your area, find cruising spots. And so I have seen on there no blacks, no drug and disease free, no, what have I seen as well?
No
Some
Asians.
No Asians,
no bald guys, no bald guys, no guys that are 61. Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Everything can be
100% full tops and things like that. And I'm like, what you're doing is you're setting up your profile for someone to come in knowing what they need to do to get the job versus you getting to know what they actually like and desire to do. There's a lot of stigma around sexual positions, but if we don't talk openly about our status, we can't even get to that spot because if I'm having sex with someone, if I want you to get your nut, I want to get mine. We worked for this. We came together for this. So let's go ahead and get there. So I'd rather you be understanding of my health and my situation as far as living with HIV. Because honestly, for me, and I would say this for me, this may not be true for everyone, but if you are living with HIV and you share that with someone, the person who knows your status are actually safer because they know your status than someone who does not know their status and who says they just assume that they are not living with HIV. Because I get my testing done, I know that I'm undetectable, I know I can't trace HIV. Your chances of contracting HIV is much less as zero with me than it would be with someone who does not know their status.
But it's interesting, Jordan, because, and I've seen this recently as PrEP came on the market and now DoxyPrep, there's also a stigma towards those of us who are on PrEP and using DoxyPrep. Oh, you're big hoes. You are big hoes. You're big sluts. And I'm like, no, say what you are. I admit I'm a big hoe. I was a big hoe all through my marriage to my ex-wife. I don't say that out of pride. Like, look at me. I was a big, no, I'm admitting it. Okay. And I am very lucky. I will say that I am very lucky that I am still here because I could have very easily, because I was so naive. Even when I was married, I was still very naive. And this was back in the day when we were testing, you got your number so-and-so come in, and you had to sit there petrified, like, what are my results? So I lived through all of that. And I always, not saying this to be negative, I feel very lucky that I'm still very healthy and all that sort of stuff. Okay, I'm 61, so sorry, boys. What Jordan might be able to produce when he comes, and what you're going to be disappointed in me. And I don't know because Jordan and I haven't hooked up, but that can be a stigma too. And so it's always interesting to see where the stigmas lie. But I've been beat up like, oh, you're on PrEP. Oh, yeah, I'm not interested in anybody who's on PrEP because that means you're whoring around. I'm like, hey, good on you, because then we're not a match.
Exactly. And I think that I'm glad you talked about like going through like a hoeing phase. I think that what I hear is that you went in search of pleasure. You went out and found out what makes Rick happy, what stimulates me, what makes me feel good. I don't think that as men we get that opportunity to do that as much as we should. There's stigma behind if we do anything, we get labeled into something without even being able to explore it. And we should have these spaces to where it's open for us to just be who we desire to be and find out what that looks like. I'm glad that there are some women out there now that are more accepting of their husbands being into men and maybe even getting pegged and going through that process because of that prostate and that pleasure point. I like that there are some women who are also into men being into men, and it gives men the opportunity to be more forthcoming with them and let them know, hey, this is my desires and my pleasure. And it allows them to have a healthier relationship and conversation because it's on the table.
Well, what I heard is you're volunteering. I'll be tribute for those experiences.
I am volunteering. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I'm fulfilling my service to the world, what I was put on the
Yes,
planet here for. So, and I think
I
that's an
am
interesting piece. Like when we start to embrace that this is how I am in the world, it actually empowers us so much. I mean, how you're showing up in the world with all the work that you're doing in the Black queer community and helping. And I'm going to invite you now to start really sharing about the Normal Anomaly initiative and the music stuff, because if we aren't showing up to do this stuff we've been called to, I mean, if somebody had told me in 1999, people have heard this before, but in 1999, when I did finally come out, that here I would be in 2025 talking to this handsome Black guy about being HIV positive and all this stuff, I would have said, you're absolutely crazy. Now I might be like, hey, let's hook up. But
right.
I would never imagined I would have taken this to where I've taken it now, because I feel called to be here. Not a guru. I just feel called to be part of this. So what really called you to step into what you've now created with the Normal Anomaly initiative?
I,
Words are hard
I,
today. I'm just going to tell everybody, listen, Rick's having words are hard today day. So
it's definitely a tongue twister. What I can say is that, and I'll go into what the normal is. The work that I have been doing started from me looking for a place to where I can be myself. I can find myself in the people that I serve, and also that I can do hard work. The emotional capital is more of my concern. Being able to see the positive impact in the person's life is more important to me than actually currency when it comes down to capitalism. But the Normal Anomaly is a organization, it's a nonprofit organization that has been focused on serving the Black queer population. How we do that is we have direct services, we do research, capacity building, and advocacy development programs. Um, we have worked together as a group of people who may not fit the traditional norms of what it means to be leadership. We are, it's a person with HIV, a person with trans experience, a person who is also going through life, has been recently homeless. We have had so many different individuals go through our job and learn how to become these leaders. What that has done is it has provided representation, not a representative. And I brought that
Yep.
up earlier because sometimes we're forced to be something as a token or fit inside some type of box. What we
Mm-hmm.
try to do is leave a representation. This is who I am as a person. This is how I show up. This is how I speak. This is my education level. This is my previous sex work. These are the things that who I am because the people who we are trying to reach can relate to that. When you see yourself in something, you're more inclined to learn about it, more inclined to get involved with it, and also be able to make the change. What we try to do is make sure that everyone who comes into our door feels like they have a home, feels like they have a sense of community, and that they matter.
That's so powerful. It's interesting because I live in a college town in,
Mhm.
you know, California, Cal Poly University, and I've done a lot of
Mhm.
work there. The representation is huge. It's a very white college. I'm just going to say, and I say that in the most loving way, where we're Central Coast, California. And while there's some representation of color, it's
Mhm.
very small. I mean, I remember when I first moved here and did something on campus, 26,000 students and about 260 students were people of color. You get the picture. It's not any fault of the university.
Mhm.
I got to know some people on campus. I'm like, so help me understand this. And they're like, we would love more.
Mhm.
But it's really hard because when we do the campus tours and we bring kids from all over, and whether it's Hispanic, Asian, Black, whatever it may be, they don't see anybody that looks like them.
Yeah.
So they're going to go where they do see somebody who looks like them. And it's
Mhm.
gotten definitely better. I mean, my husband's Hispanic, even just being here and living
Mhm.
here at times, there's like, we'll go some places and he's the only person of color, in the space, so to speak. I think this representation is really huge because when you do feel part of something, you have more confidence. You're
Yes.
more willing to do things. You see that it's safe to be who you are. And this is what I love about, this is part of the reason I wanted you on, is to talk about why representation. I know we can say representation matters. I get
Mhm.
it. It's a lovely coined phrase. But what's really deeper for you in the representation piece? Like, I mean, let's step away from normal anomaly for just a minute.
Mhm.
Like, when you as a Black queer man
Mhm.
feels like I'm this representation, what does that look like in your world for you, Jordan?
Mhm. That looks like possibility. And with
Ooh.
possibility gives hope because in full transparency, what's been going on in politics
Mm-hmm.
has been stripping away hope.
Yep.
And so it's
And it wasn't
also
just a tagline for a particular lovely
mm,
candidate.
no. This is it's taking away the hope. And it's taken away in a different type of way. It's taking it because I'm familiar with this power dynamic, this pull of being a Black person in America. I'm familiar with
Yep.
that. I'm familiar with this pull and this power play of being a man in America. I'm familiar with that. It is the fact that my identity is in the process of getting silenced and or erased. My history is getting ready to be in the process of getting silenced and or erased. So if I don't know it's possible, then I can't have hope to do more. And so I think for me, what I see is that when I show up in spaces, I want to show up as myself. It can be scary sometimes, if I'm being honest, because I'm putting myself on the front lines to be more targeted than I already am because of the shade of my skin. But it's also allowing me to know that someone will see this or someone will hear this and say that, ah, maybe I can do it too. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe I can come outside and go to a party to meet someone. Or maybe I can try out for this new job, or maybe I can actually get into this type of work. It's showing the possibility, which also gives hope.
I love that. Actually, when you said representation equals possibility, I almost wanted to stop you right there and go, okay, this is an Oprah moment. This is that tweetable. We just had it. Okay.
Right?
It is because it's actually, I mean, I've never heard, I mean, I've had a lot of, Black guests on the podcast and we've always kind of talked about it in different ways, but that was a solid for me. I mean, I felt that one
Thank you.
because I want to be able to feel into it. I always use this as the example. I can walk down the street and nobody's going to know I'm a gay man.
Mhm.
You walk down the street, you can't
That's right.
hide the fact that you're a Black man.
That's right.
You can still hide that you're queer.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
guess if we want to say we're hiding, we don't have to whatever. But there's this piece of when that representation shows up and you at least can maintain the possibility that I'm safe,
Mhm.
that I'm going to be able to access housing, healthcare, whatever it may be. I have to be honest, since the new administration, even myself, okay, do I need to be on PrEP? No, of course I don't have to be on PrEP. Do I want to be on PrEP? Yes, I want it for when those moments are that I decide to be a hoe.
Yeah.
But I don't have to worry about it, so to speak, if it goes away. But for my brothers like you, and I'm not just talking my black brothers, guys, listen,
No.
I'm talking about my brothers like you who
Mhm.
are HIV positive. When I started seeing immediately that stuff getting taken down off of websites and
Yes.
everything, I am like, they are trying to
Yes.
erase a reality which is not grounded in reality, period.
Yes. Yes.
And that scares the crap out of me.
It scares me as well because there is this spot of what um, I don't know the mind of the person in leadership who sits in Pennsylvania Avenue. But what I can say is that there's a focus on what is relevant and important to them, and everything else is a non-existent factor. It's probably
Mm-hmm.
the best language that I can
Yep.
use. Within that, that concerns me because the majority of the population is in need of the resources. That is a non-existent factor to you. So what are we to do?
Yep.
How do we navigate? How do we move? How do we find those resources? People are going around trying to figure out how can they learn from other populations and cultures how to do what they're doing to survive
Mm-hmm.
because we have been in the space of thriving, looking for the American dream and finding these things. But it's like, actually, what is it that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to live a quality of life
Well,
that is
just you're
boxed.
just trying to live,
That's it.
period.
That's all I'm
That's
trying to do.
it.
Yeah.
And I have people in my sphere who try to gaslight me like he's not coming after your marriage. I'm like, bullshit.
Hmm.
It may not be right now, but
Right
this is
now.
the beginning.
That's
You
it.
know, he loves the LGBT.
Mm,
Notice what they say, the LGBT
mm,
community. I'm like,
mm,
you forgot
mm.
something. There's a
Right.
T plus on the end of that. Okay.
That's it.
And it's like if the Q T or the T plus can go away in a short 3-4 weeks, it's not much further where the rest of the alphabet disappears too. And I love that we are having this impassioned conversation because even in this impassioned conversation, I realize when this airs, it just puts even a bigger target on our backs. And I'm
It
like,
does.
I don't like that, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to back down from it either because this
No.
is me living my life. That's all we're asking for. And I think so many gay men, and I'm now going to like try to do this in a very loving way, guys. Gay men who set themselves up with no blacks, no this, no this, you're actually contributing to the problem. I want you to have your preferences. There's a difference. I love people who have preferences. I have a preference. I
Hmm.
don't do well with younger men. Now, I'm not saying younger, like 30s, I'm
Yeah.
totally cool. Late 20s, if they're in the right frame of headspace, totally cool. I love it. The 18-year-olds get turned on by daddy, but it ain't happening. You're just going to come real quick and then we done.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so that's a preference for me.
Hmm.
There's a preference for body type, but I'm not necessarily,
Hmm.
I do have a preference. I'm going to be real honest that I do have on my profile. Hey, if you don't have a photo, we're probably not a match. However,
Hmm.
I get that because I hid in the closet for years too. So I try to counteract it with like, I get it, but this is my preference because,
Hmm.
and I still get guys who will hit me up, cool. But then they when they do, they pretty much immediately send their picture right away. And then I'm like, totally cool. I thank you for
Right.
respecting me. I'm not saying, oh, if you don't have a picture, don't even bother you. I'm saying this is my preference. And I think this is where so many things get missed in how we dialogue and the narratives we set up. And then here we end up, you know.
It's so important that when you bring up the picture, it makes me think about how we navigate when we talk about representation. So that's how this things going on in the White House has laid out. We decided the theme around our event in the week is going to be visibility
Mm-hmm.
because visibility keeps getting stripped away. And
Yep.
so we decided that that was going to be the important piece because we understand that we are under attack as people. but we're still going to be visible because we're still here.
Yep.
You can try to remove labels and gender markers and remove things off a website, but we're still the people. We still need the resources. We're still here. And so when I think about how we plan on using visibility to make this powerful statement, it's going to be important for us to stand strong and also
Mhm.
understand what we are against,
Yes.
as we are trying to process still being visible and being
Mhm.
vigilant.
So let's talk about the event, because you suddenly
Yes,
brought it up again. Good
yeah,
job there, man. You segued nicely to that. But there's a big event that you're helping
yes,
with, and coming up in May, right?
yes, coming in May. So so we have a music festival. This will be year 4 for us. It's going to be quite a few events happening during this time frame. But to go back into it, the theme of the week is visibility. So we have this sneaker ball that we're going to have for women, and it's going to be focused on allowing women to have a space to talk about pleasure, talk about their understanding, and also learn about HIV, since a lot of women don't know about the stats and the statistics that impact them.
Now,
We're
we
going
shouldn't
to,
talk about pleasure, because pleasure is a no-no in the
right,
new way of being in the world too.
correct,
Nobody should have pleasure, period,
correct.
except those who want to have it with their 4 wives and 20,000
Absolutely.
kids. So just I had to
Absolutely the
throw that
point.
in there.
So we also have we have the music festival, but we have the day 1 event that's going to be happening. It's going to allow for people local in the Houston community, and also a few people that we have brought in to have this stage to perform, to let the community see what they have to offer. So many different representations of gender and spectrums, even though that there are I'm not gonna go into what that man said. So then going also into the day 2, which is our larger music festival event, we have it's public now, but we have our headliner, which is
Mhm.
going to be NLE Chopper. We also have Kenda Man, who's actually local from Houston. We have Asher, Havon, Seven Deep, and this other artist named Jeremiel. And we have a spectrum of music, because in this space, when you come into the festival, it's not just about you being Black and queer. It's about you being a part of a community. And we have those individuals who are Black that can come. We have those individuals who are queer that come. You don't have to be Black and queer to be visible, but we want to make sure that it's a safe, brave space for you in those spaces. And so we're going to have it in Stampede, Houston, because we're in Houston, Texas. But I'll make sure to share the information with you as far as like any links or anything that can
Yeah,
be
we
promoted so
got
that people.
we're all ahead of you already, man. We got all
Perfect,
that. So
perfect,
yeah. But of course, I'm
perfect.
waiting for my event ticket. Then I'll post the links.
Absolutely. Yes, right. It's coming right to you because I want to make sure you're
Yeah,
there as well
yeah,
because I want you to
yeah,
experience it because that'll be great for you too.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so powerful that and not surprising, okay, that visibility is the theme. And I've thought a lot about this before I even knew that you and I would be having this conversation. But I thought about it more from a fear perspective when all this was actually starting to happen. Well, let's just say, as soon as the
Hmm.
election was over, I'm like, wow, okay. And one of the first thoughts I thought about visibility is, for the last few years, things have been fairly good, but as the rise of anti-Semitism and hate
Hmm.
and everything kept tick, 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 I kept thinking, when are we going to have the news story that a
Hmm.
Pride festival became, and I hate to even say it, but became a
Yeah.
headline news story, right?
Yeah.
And I have to be really honest, I'm actually more nervous now for this coming Pride season because of the stripping away of all the initiatives to
Yes.
like all this stuff. Like there's no even though I think the corporate support at times was like, okay, we're doing our token thing here. Let's go
Hmm.
support the queers, right? Um, it's almost actually scarier this time, because it's
Yes.
almost like, okay, we have to protect ourselves because we want to support you, but we got to protect us. So you don't get, and I don't remember, it was somewhere up north where Milwaukee or somewhere where they like, we don't need Target's money. We're going to make
Hmm.
this happen. To me, that is where you become the defiant rebel in a very powerful representation way. We're
Yes.
making it known we are still here. You
Yes.
can't hide us. And it was interesting on Valentine's Day or close to Valentine's Day. You know, I did the obligatory, let's get a card for the family, the husband, all this sort of stuff. Honey, I love you. It wasn't obligatory. I wanted to get you the card. And I found it really interesting that when I got into Target to buy the cards, like, oh, isn't this interesting? They do have the queer Valentine's cards. And that was right after they're like, we're shutting our DEI down and all this stuff. To me, the visibility is such the thing now. Because if we don't allow ourselves, notice the words I use there, guys, if we don't allow ourselves and continue to give ourselves permission as white, Asian, Black, queer, you know, gender nonconforming, whatever, if we don't give ourselves the permission to be visible, shame on us. Shame on us. Because that's what's given them the permission to go, see, they don't exist. They don't exist. Yeah. And I have to admit, Jordan, I thought about, do I even continue the podcast? And I thought, fuck yes, I do. Fuck yes, I do. Yeah. Because whatever will be. And I'm not going to let my voice die out just because, okay, let's roll. I'm not going to, you know, what's the thing? Something and obey, bow and obey, or whatever the thing, like obey in advance. Right. I am not going to obey in advance on this. You don't get to take my joy in no way, shape, or form.
We're so used to having to conform that it's going into the process like, no, I'm actually not going to do that. You can stop me, but I'm going to find another way to do what I need to do. Just for you as well, but just walking out your house is a form of advocacy, just showing up as you. And so I think that anyone that's listening to this, this is a form of showing yourself to allow yourself to be able to be present, be visible, within regards of your safety, of course. Make sure that you are aware of your surroundings and your things, but just walking outside of your house and being who you are is a sign of advocacy.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's challenging. Let's just say that it is challenging to think. I mean, I'm a little more cautious on certain things, but I don't like that. You know, if we happen to be shopping and I say to my husband, hey, honey, can you grab that? Who knows in this day and age, some crazy could hear that and who knows what could happen. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling that I like if I have to travel for work. Do I even set foot in certain states? You know, it's like, do I be that defiant? Like, and when this was happening before, I got like right after Roe v. Wade got overturned and Texas was like it was on my radar because it was just, there was so much happening and everything. And, you know, you live in that state. Yeah. I was like, I ain't going back to Texas. And I'm like, wait, I don't agree, but then they win. And it's hard at times. Like my parents live in Idaho, in one of the worst spaces in Idaho, like in Coeur d'Alene. So most people who know, when you know. And it's really difficult. And I'm trying to get them to shift. And it's hard when they're in their 80s, like, well, this is where everything is. I'm like, okay, fine. But it makes me concerned. It makes, I mean, especially when Idaho was the first one right after all this to go, we want to try to get the Supreme Court to overturn gay marriage. I'm like, I will not go. If that starts to happen and we go back to the patchwork thing, as much as I possibly can, I will never set foot in those states, because if something happens to me and my marriage is invalid in that state, or something happens to my husband, I can't even come see him. No. You know, and these are the things that we don't, you know, I think we think about these things, but the rest of the world doesn't get it. They just don't get it. So the festival is called
the Black Queer Advancement Festival. So BQAF.
See, I thought it was just Black Queer as fuck. I was like, I love it. When I first read, I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'm like, oh, that's not it. But, you know, I'm sure it's already been said a few times that, like, you bet we are Black Queer as fuck and you leave us the fuck alone.
Absolutely.
Well, it's so cool that this is happening, and I love that you are, I know I've said this a couple of times, that you are allowing yourself the visibility to show up, to keep having interviews, to keep doing the work that you do, to inspire other men, not just Black men. I hope this conversation has actually inspired some white boys to go, be supportive, because if we're not in
Yes.
this together, we're not in this together. And again, you can have your preferences. If you don't want to have sex with a black man, I'm just going to say you're missing out. And I'm generalizing there, boys. But
I agree.
yeah, I agree. But also, I think sometimes when you go, oh, well, that doesn't concern me, then you're as guilty as like, oh, well, that's not going to affect me. No, it does. Because if they take away the trans, they take away the plus, the non-conforming, the non-binary, it's just a tick, tick, tick away before it becomes all of our problem. And I love that you're trying to help in every way, create the inclusion, create the let us be seen, let us all be visible, and that you do it from a really beautiful space in your heart, man. So
thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
yeah.
It's
And
important.
thank you for helping me wrap up, like, Black History. I almost feel like I'm like trying to tokenize that, but I'm not. I'm like, I love celebrating what we need to celebrate when we need to celebrate. It's kind of like, okay, World AIDS Day, I'm always going to do a show around that, not to tokenize it, but I want to be supportive and have those conversations. And I thank you so much, Jordan, that you've helped me have this conversation. I've learned a lot, even though I pretty much know everything, just going to say, no, I'm kidding. But that you've helped deliver a message that I hope invites everybody to be who they're meant to be in the world and carry that visibility banner even more now than ever. So did we cover everything, man? Did I get everything out you wanted to say? I mean,
I actually have one thing to go into what you said about tokenism, so that people can, for anyone who thinks that you're doing that, you were very intentional, and it's a difference. You're not using my voice as a way to boost yourself up. You're allowing me to have space. So you're leveraging your privilege. That's a difference. And so I think that being intentional allows it to not be tokenized. So I thank you for
you just touched my heart on that one, because that's
thank you.
I hope that's what I do. I'm still learning a lot. I mean, I remember when I first started, having people on my past podcast who were transgender, and it was like, I'm having to learn my first, gender nonconforming. I stumbled all over the place because they represented as a physical manifestation as a man. And so tell me what, bro, or like, hey man, I'm like, oh wait, I got to learn to like, and we're all here's the beauty. We're all humans learning. We're just humans learning. But as soon as we think, and I hate that we're bringing up the administration again, as soon as we think we don't have anything to learn, we've learned it all, that's when the problems start. That's when the problems start. So
that's it.
Okay, I think you and I could do this again sometime. We'd figure out some more stuff to talk about, but you have been a blessing. I hope the guys take something from this. I can't wish you nothing but fun and enjoyment with the festival and everything. And if there's ever anything else you would like to come talk about, Mr. Jordan J. Edwards, I would love to have you back, bro, to talk about whatever it is. Even could be go deeper on like, what's it like being a queer black man with HIV and dating and hooking up and, you said it, being a hoe and cruising, whatever it is, because it's not easy in the regular world. And then you add these anomalies to it.
Yes.
And suddenly, people diss on you for the silliest, craziest reasons. So
absolutely. I would love to do that.
All right, man. Well, thank you. And everybody, we'll have another show coming up in just another week, but thank you for being part of my world, being part of supporting these voices, these conversations, getting out there. Don't forget that we have our once a month men's chats. You can go to rickclemons.com or go to gaymenschats.com and sign up to be on the notifications. And we would love to have you. And we have a Facebook group for 40 plus gay men, gay talk community. Join it. We get some good interaction happening over there, but more than anything, keep going out there, being visible, being who you are. No fears, no excuses, no apologies. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.
That's a wrap for 40 plus gay men, gay talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40 plus gay men, gay talk, where the conversations continue.